Welcome to a play-by-play review. I'm your host, Henry, and unfortunately we're going to have to start off on another bit of a tragic note for this episode since we are going back to the football world. Over the weekend, on Saturday, I believe, former Cardinals wide receiver and I think most recently Vikings wide receiver Rondale Moore sadly died on Saturday. I don't know if an official cause has been released yet. There has been speculations that he took his own life, and you can basically just take what I said in the Marshawn Kneeland segment in last week's episode when I was talking about the Cowboys and repeat it here. Once again, mental health is no joke. It's not something to be taken lightly or to be brushed off or something like to be ignored. If you are, struggling with that in any kind of way, don't be afraid to seek help or just find someone to talk to about it. It's not a stigma. It's not anything bad. It's not going to hurt you. Please, if you need help, don't let it be too late, because the permanent answer is never the correct answer. I'll just leave it at that. But anyway, to bigger and brighter news, I should say, and maybe not bigger, but to less tragic news. Let's go with that. We'll go back to actual football now. So one thing I think I might have forgot to mention last week when I was talking about the Eagles was Jeff Stoutland, their legendary and longtime offensive line coach, who molded guys like Jason Kelce, Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata, all those guys. He has stepped away from the team. I don't think it's like he's retired. I think he stepped away from the team is what he said. So he is no longer a part of the Eagles organization. So big change there for the Eagles. Don't know how much it's going to affect them going forward, but given that their offensive line this year took majorly regressed, partly due to injuries. It was I'm not going to just gloss over the fact their offensive line dealt with a lot of injuries, but still it's very, very big for the Eagles there. So I'm just going to keep running through some various news that has happened in, say, the past week in the football world, and before we get on to the NFC North, which I should say we're doing the NFC North this week. You can probably tell by the title, but to officially state it, we're doing the NFC North. So actually, speaking of the NFC North, the Green Bay Packers, Rich Bisaccia, their special teams coordinator, former interim head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders back in 2021, he is stepping down from his post as special teams coordinator, and I know Packers fans are pretty happy about that because their special teams was not very good. It's unfortunate because Bisaccia seems like a pretty cool guy. I feel like everything that I've seen about him is that players and fans really like him as a person. It's just he has not done a very good job in terms of coaching and all that. So new opening for the Packers in the special teams ranks in terms of coaching. Next up, the Seattle Seahawks, the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks, are actually up for sale at the moment. Their owner, who I don't remember off the top of my head, is giving up the team in terms of sale. I know basically nothing on this front, so I'm just going to report the news there. I'm not really going to comment on it because I got nothing. And you would have to ask a Seahawks fan who would probably know a lot more than I do on that. And a similar front in terms of teams and big financial stuff related things, the Chicago Bears are potentially moving to Indiana in a sense. It's that their new stadium, which has been sort of a bit of a hotly contested thing. They've been initially wanted to try and redo Soldier Field, but then that would just be way too much. So then they wanted to do something in I think it was Arlington Heights or something, which is a suburb of Chicago, but that fell through. So now it's a city basically a town in Indiana that's right next to the border with Chicago. So it's actually closer than the one in Arlington Heights. That's the new destination, leading destination at the moment. Nothing I think has been set in stone, but it's we might see the Indiana Bears instead of the Chicago Bears. I doubt they'd rename them, but still, it's kind of funny on that front. Next up, for the Los Angeles Rams, they are promoting passing game coordinator. Let me try this. Nate Scheelhaas. There's 2 E's and 2 A's in there. Actually, 3 E's total. I'm going to go Scheelhaas, and he's being promoted to offense coordinator, replacing the departed Mike LaFleur, if I remember correctly. And so the Rams have a pretty loaded coaching staff. They also, I think I said this last week or 2 weeks ago or whenever it was, but they brought over Cliff Kingsbury from the Commanders as their, I think Kingsbury's actually slotted in as the assistant head coach now. And then Kingsbury also brought over Brian Johnson, who was an assistant coach on the Commanders that I honestly didn't know who existed. If I'm being honest, I don't pay too much attention to like the assistant ranks in the coaching staff, even for the Commanders. But yeah, he is moved along with Kingsbury to the Rams. Next up, a couple of notes on the Cowboys. They have extended Javonte Williams, their running back, who just had a breakout season for them, or I guess a comeback season, I should say, on a 3-year deal with $16 million guaranteed. I think it was 3 years, $24 million with $16 guaranteed, if I remember correctly. So nice payday for him, well deserved there. They have also released linebacker Logan Wilson, who, if I remember correctly, they traded for during the trade deadline from the Bengals, I want to say. Not for any like super high pick. It was, I want to say, like a 5th or 6th. But still, not a great trade in hindsight for the Cowboys in there. Their linebacker core definitely needs some work. Next up, a pair of Falcons news. They have franchise tagged tight end Kyle Pitts, for their former 4th overall pick in 2021, I believe, who had, I believe, his best season as well in 2025. My guess is they're not going to trade him. I don't know if they're going to work out in an extension, but I think they're going to try and keep him around, which makes sense because, he's a pretty good athlete there. And you want to keep the good athletes around. The Falcons are also planning on releasing quarterback Kirk Cousins at the start of the new league year in March. So actually in just a couple weeks. But yeah, so the Kirk Cousins release, not super surprising. I think they're just biting the bullet in terms of dead cap money. Since Cousins just he's washed at this point, unfortunately. I've always been a fan of Kirk Cousins, but yeah, I think it's either accept just being a backup or might be time to hang it up because he just doesn't have any. He doesn't have the athleticism to like move, and his arm strength's kind of going away as well a little bit. And the accuracy has always been a bit erratic. It's just not a good combination here for Captain Kirk anymore. I'd like to see him on TV though. He's got a very fun personality essentially. Next up, Bradley Bozeman, the center most recently for the Los Angeles Chargers, has announced his retirement. Unfortunately, he did not have a very, very good season at all this past year or even like the past 2 years. From what I've seen, it's again kind of like the Rich Bisaccia thing. Great guy, and like teammates love him, and like he's a great team player and all that. He's just not a very good actual football player at the moment. The Chargers offensive line has been something that I, along with many others, have harped on throughout this entire year. Basically the interior offensive line. So Bozeman and then the 2 guards, Mekhi Becton was one of them, and he's been released at this point. They had a terrible, terrible year. And yeah, I mean, Bozeman's been in the league for like 9-10 years, I think at this point. So it's not like he's young, but still, I mean, it's always, retirements are always a little like bittersweet and all that, but Chargers fans, I mean, they're sad to see him go in the sense of like he's a good guy, but not exactly missing his play, essentially. Next up, also on the offensive line front, Trent Williams. There's a chance he might get cut by the 49ers because he, I believe, is owed $39 million this season with his contract. And 49ers and Trent Williams and like his agent are struggling to come to an agreement on a restructure or an extension or anything like that. So basically there's been reports that the Niners are considering releasing him because he's owed a lot of money. And while he's kind of worth it because Trent Williams is really, really good, it's also a lot of money and they kind of need it elsewhere too. So there's a chance that one of the best offensive linemen in the past decade plus goes on, becomes a free agent. So, you could see him go to, I don't know, somewhere like the Patriots. Like they could pick him up kick Will Campbell into guard or move him over to right tackle, maybe. I don't know. But that'll be interesting. Keep an eye out on the Trent Williams saga. And finally, Sean Payton of the Denver Broncos, head coach, is actually giving up play calling duties to his new offensive coordinator, Davis Webb. So that's pretty interesting because I feel like Payton's always been the guy to call offensive plays. And I don't know if it's the first time in his career as a head coach he's giving it up, but I don't know. Should be interesting. And honestly, it might not be a bad thing for the Broncos because I feel like his offensive play calling was pretty hit or miss. I'll just say that. I was very, very close to just throwing in the reference to that old OG TikTok song from 2018 that I hated because it was really annoying, but I didn't. Although now that I referenced it, I'll just stop here. I guess they never miss. Yeah, let's go to the Chicago Bears. So yeah, the Chicago Bears of the first of the four teams, the NFC North. The NFC North we'll talk about. I need to project more. Anyway, the Bears had quite the season. They were going into the second season with first overall pick out of USC, Caleb Williams, and coming off a 5-12 record in 2024, where a lot of stuff went wrong, just to say the least. They also fired their head coach, Matt Eberflus. It took me a sec to remember his name. They fired Matt Eberflus in November, after Thanksgiving last year, and they replaced him with Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. And this is a hire that I think everyone kind of liked going in. And from the get-go, I think it was pretty good. But I'll go with as per usual, go with the free agency draft and all that leading up into the season. So yeah, the big news in terms of coaching in terms of the coaches was Ben Johnson. And going into the season, or the offseason, I should say, they had a good bit. It was the offense certainly had a lot of talent, but the big problem was the offensive line, since Caleb Williams got sacked, I think, 68 times in 2024, if I remember correctly, which was third most in NFL history, which is kind of crazy. So yeah, the offensive line was a big deal that they needed to upgrade, and they did. Credit Ryan Pace or Ryan Poles. Sorry, not Ryan Pace. Ryan Pace is a completely different GM. Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson, the GM and head coach of the Bears, they went out and fixed the offensive line. So they made two trades in the offseason, basically right at the start of the offseason. They traded for two guards, actually, Jonah Jackson from the Los Angeles Rams and Joe Thuney from the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think I'm pretty sure they gave Jackson a big extension right after they traded for him. And I want to say they did as well for Thuney, but I actually don't remember off the top of my head. Okay, I'm reading it. Yeah, they gave him an extension in May. So a 2-year extension. So they gave up a 2025 6th-round pick to the Rams for Jonah Jackson, and then they gave up a 2026 4th-round pick to the Chiefs for Joe Thuney. And just going to spoil it right now, that was kind of a steal because Joe Thuney was really good. They also, in free agency, signed Drew Dahlman, the center from the Atlanta Falcons, on a 3-year, $42 million deal. Their other big contracts were to another former Falcon, Grady Jarrett, their longtime defensive tackle. I think he's actually a 2015 5th-round pick. So very good find there for the Falcons way back then. Not quite what the player that he once was, back in the day, but someone to beef up their offensive line or their defensive line. Sorry, since their D line for Chicago, it had some players they have Montez Sweat on that line, and I'll always be a fan of Montez Sweat as a Commanders fan, but it was definitely one that struggled a little bit just overall. So getting a big body guy in Grady Jarrett certainly helped. And then they also signed former Colts defensive end Dio. I'm going to try my best here. Odeyingbo to a 3-year, $48 million deal. Unfortunately, Odeyingbo suffered a torn Achilles in week 9 of the 2025 season. So we didn't really get to see his full potential realized in Chicago. But hopefully he'll be back in 2026 and can help at that defensive line, since ultimately it's kind of the same deal for the Bears. Their defensive line was probably the weakest aspect. Well, I don't know. it wasn't the best at rushing the quarterback, but overall it was defense that, well, we'll get to it in a little bit here, but they were a very opportunistic defense. So moving into the draft, the Bears had the 10th overall pick. They went with tight end Colston Loveland out of Michigan. There were the two tight ends on the board were Loveland and then Tyler Warren out of Penn State. And honestly, you could go with either one of them. Both of them had very good seasons. And Bears went with Loveland. Then they also picked Luther Burden, wide receiver out of Missouri. Luther Burden the third, I should say, in the second round at pick 39. Then they made good number of other picks here and there that I feel like didn't contribute too much, at least off the top of my head, except for 7th round running back out of Rutgers, Kyle Madungai, which is a very solid pick there. Also some other free agent moves because I forgot to cover a few of them, like smaller signings, I should say. They brought in wide receiver Olamide Zaccheaus from the Commanders on a 1-year deal. And they also got rid of, they basically replaced Keenan Allen, the wide receiver that they signed, longtime Los Angeles Charger. They brought him in 2024, and he just didn't have a very good season at all. So they basically replaced Allen with Olamide Zaccheaus, and Zaccheaus had a okay season. They also brought in Durham Smythe, tight end from Miami. I just always love his name because it's Durham Smythe. It's like, where else are you going to find that name? But yeah, I feel like that was mostly it in terms of free agency for the Bears. It wasn't like, outside of the moves on the offensive line, it wasn't super flashy, but you don't always need super flashy, and the offensive line moves were really good. Just going to say that right now. They're very good. So moving into week number 1. Bears went, also in the preseason, they went 2-0-1, tied against the Miami Dolphins, then won 2 straight against Bills and the Chiefs. Then week 1 was home against the Miami Dolphins. Oh, wait, no, never mind. I'm reading the preseason again. Sorry. Week 1 was home against Minnesota. That's what it was. All right, I remember this now because this was 9's debut, and we'll get to 9 in a little bit. But yeah, this is the debut of J.J. McCarthy in the NFL, regular season, I should say. And start out, the Bears, they're looking solid, all things considered. They were leading 17-6 by the fourth quarter. The offense was hit or miss, but their defense was what was keeping them in the game. Or I should say the defense was winning them the game. They had a pick 6, and they're holding the Vikings to only 6 points. The defense was playing very well. And then 9 happened. The good 9. J.J. McCarthy actually had a good fourth quarter, scoring 21 points in the fourth quarter. And the Bears would choke away the lead and lose 27-24 in a pretty embarrassing home loss, to say the least. Not a great start for the Bears. And it got worse, actually, in week 2, as they would go into Detroit, against Ben Johnson's old squad, and get just absolutely demolished. They lost 52-21. Yeah, this was really bad. It was looking to be, same old Bears and same old Lions, in the sense that the Lions were going to be really good and the Bears were going to be really bad. But then they started to turn things around. The offense was taking a little bit to get started. Caleb Williams, he was looking all right, and all things considered, it was like they needed a spark. So what better than to play one of the worst defenses in the history of the NFL in the Dallas Cowboys? So week 3, home against Dallas, they would win 31-14 in a game that was, the Chicago Air Show showed up. Caleb Williams had a great game here. And it was like, you need a good offensive performance. Pretty good bet to play the Cowboys, essentially. They then continued their winning streak, going against the Raiders in the following week in Las Vegas. They would actually block a game-winning field goal by the Raiders, and one of their many, many fourth quarter dazzlers that they would have. Yeah, the Bears were living and dying by the fourth quarter in this season, and this was one of many that they had. Week 6, as they had a week 5 bye, one of the early teams to have a bye, was the fabled rematch against Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders in Washington, and I covered this last week. The Bears, they were going down early in a rainy game, but eventually a costly fumble towards the end of the game by Jaden Daniels and Jacory Krosky-Merritt on a fumble led to the Bears and newly signed kicker Jake Moody to fill in for the injured. I don't remember who was their other kicker. Give me a sec. Where's the roster? Cairo Santos. Okay, that's what I thought. But Cairo Santos had been injured, so they brought in Jake Moody. And Jake Moody actually nailed, I think, 3 field goals in this game to help the Bears win 25-24 in a very, very close matchup. Another fourth quarter comeback for the Bears. And as I said last week, this is basically the inverse of 2024, where this year the Bears just started skyrocketing after this game, and the Commanders went into full free fall. So the Bears continued their winning streak. They won a pretty big, well, maybe not necessarily winning streak because there's one loss in here, but they continued their winning ways next week in Week 7 against the Saints in Chicago, where they would win 26-14. This is one where it was not nearly as competitive, I should say. The Bears were, I believe this is a Spencer Rattler start for the Saints, and the Bears defense was making his life not fun for this game. And so the Bears as a whole, their offense was like, and was largely good, though it would shut down at times, but especially, now here in there are times when it was good, times when it was bad, but overall it was starting to show progress. It was the defense that, while it would certainly give up plenty of yards, they were very, very good at creating turnovers. Like the best in the league at creating turnovers. Next week, though, they would not fare nearly as well, as they would go into Baltimore and just get completely shellacked. They would lose 30-16. And even still, the Bears were sitting at 4-3. And they would go into Cincinnati the next week. And this was kind of could have been a make or break game for the Bears, or I feel like it kind of was a make or break game for the Bears here, since this was one where both defenses just kind of took a back seat, as both offenses were just going back and forth and scoring points. It was touchdown, 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 field goal, field goal, field goal. Eventually, the Bengals actually had a lead late in the game, and it was with 49 seconds left on the game clock. That's what it was. The Bengals had a 1-point lead, and then Chicago decided to hit Caleb Williams connected Colson Loveland over the middle for a 58-yard touchdown with some really, really bad tackling by the Bengals. And Chicago wound up winning the game 47-42 on a game that had the Bears had 576 yards of total offense. It was kind of crazy. Another one of the comeback wins for the Bears. They're down once more and came back right at the end to win it. And, I had they lost this game, probably would have been very different. But instead, big win for the Bears. They went to 5-3. Then they kind of did something very similar the next week, where they would go host the Giants and go down. Then they scored 14 points in the fourth quarter. The Giants were actually up 20-10 with just about 10 minutes left to go in the game, and then the Bears scored 2 touchdowns and came back and won 24-20. And it just felt like every week they would just come back and win again and again and again. Next week they would go into Minnesota, and this time they actually wouldn't need to come back to win this game. They'd actually just go out to a lead and once again kind of stymie the Vikings, and they would hold on to a lead, although the Vikings nearly came back and won again. Though this time the Bears would win 19-17. The week after was home against the Steelers, and once again, another close game. And in the end, even though Aaron Rodgers, the longtime owner of the Chicago Bears, as he likes to put it, put up a good fight, the Bears would hold out and win 31-28. Then on Black Friday in Philadelphia, this is a game I was very much looking forward to. The Bears completely destroy the Eagles on the ground. This was one where the run game for the Bears really started to shine, with both DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai having some great games, or just a great game here. They combined for 255 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. The Eagles could do nothing to stop them, and the defense also was having a great time. This was also, I talked about this a little bit last week with the Eagles. This is the one where the Eagles offense really started to show their flaws, and they were really struggling to push the ball down the field and just couldn't get anything going. And then on the flip side, the Eagles defense could not stop the run in this game. It was very glorious to watch as a hater of the Eagles. So yeah, thank you, Chicago, for this one. And so after that, the Bears were at this point 9-3, having a little 5-game winning streak. They won, 9 of their last 10. So pretty good right there. Pretty good stretch for the Bears. They would then go into Green Bay, however, and they would fall. They would fall here. I was like, took a second. I was like, wait a minute, the Bears beat the Packers, but no, that would be just a couple of games later. We'll get to that one. But this is one where the Bears actually had a chance to tie it up, but in the end, Caleb Williams kind of overthrew a pass and was intercepted by Keyshawn Nixon in the end zone for a touchback with 22 seconds. It was like kind of a forced throw to at the very end of the game, but still one is rough to see there. Packers would win this one 28-21, and what was shaping out to be a very, very, very competitive NFC North. A week after, against the Browns, against the hard luck Browns, the Bears would rebound and they would just destroy them 31-3. It was not even close at all. It was sad. it was a very sad watch. Then in week 16, in the rematch against the Packers on, I believe that was why is this a Fox game at night? Why am I not remembering? This was a Saturday night game. That's what it was. I was very confused for a sec. But yeah, Saturday night game, Packers at Bears. Once again, Bears were down in the fourth quarter, and Caleb Williams. Actually, they were down, and then the Bears actually recovered an onside kick, and Caleb Williams threw a touchdown pass, went to overtime, and then in overtime, Malik Willis, my mouth went crazy there. Yeah, Malik Willis fumbled a snap, gave it back to Chicago. And then almost immediately, Caleb Williams hit DJ Moore on an insane touchdown pass, 46 yards, called house, crazy, crazy game. I think this actually won play of the year at NFL Honors. And so the Bears would upset the Packers in a thrilling overtime, defeat the Packers. They certainly made a lot of Packers fans upset. That's for sure. But yeah, defeated the Packers 22-16 to basically cement themselves in the wild card at this point. And actually, were they? No, they were winning the division at this point, right? Yeah, they were basically cementing their division lead because it was. Yeah. All right, I got confused for a second. No, this was basically the Bears were taking control of the North at this point. Then in week 17 in San Francisco, they would have another, big offensive shootout. This was on a Sunday night, I believe. And unfortunately for the Bears, they would actually lose this one 38-42. But this is just one where it's kind of like that Bengals game where it was just defenses took a backseat and the offenses just put on a show. Brock Purdy had an insane game this game. And I mean, Caleb Williams, they were able to keep up. For the most part, they just couldn't quite edge them out in the end. Then in the regular season finale, they would play host to the Detroit Lions, and I think they were resting a good chunk of their starters at this point. And the Lions would actually win this game 19-16. It was kind of like the Bears were at this point, even if they were nearly came back in the fourth quarter again. They put up all 16 of their points in the fourth quarter. This was one where it was like, between the Bears and the Eagles fighting for the 2 and 3 seeds, since I'm starting to remember this again, there was like the Bears could afford to lose if the Eagles also lose, and the Eagles did lose, so it's like this didn't harm them too much, essentially. Then going into the playoffs, they actually played host to the Green Bay Packers, as the Packers were the 7th seed, and the Bears were the 2 seed. And pretty similar to the Week 16 game, the Bears would go down early. They put up 6 points in the first 3 quarters, while the Packers put up a lot more, essentially. But the Packers definitely left a lot of opportunities out on the field, especially thanks to Brandon McManus missing multiple kicks. He was having a really bad day. And then the Bears just proceeded to put up 25 points in the fourth quarter and win 31-27. Just That was how they did the whole time. This whole season was they were the comeback kids essentially, and Packers just completely and utterly collapsed. It was very sad to watch. From like it was just embarrassing. But still, credit to the Bears. This is really really good for them, and they had a ton of momentum going into Los Angeles, who were playing host to Los Angeles actually, but. Going into the game against the Rams, who were coming off a narrow win, but a shaky win against the Carolina Panthers. However, this is where the Bears' story ends, as they would actually play the Rams into overtime, and they even had a chance. But in the end, Caleb Williams would throw an interception on a play where he targeted DJ Moore, but DJ Moore was running a very lazy route, and then Caleb Williams just didn't throw a very good ball regardless. Got intercepted by Cam Curl. Then the Rams would wind up kicking the game-winning field goal, defeating the Bears in the divisional round 20-17. Overall, though, this was a very, very impressive season by the Bears. It's similar, again, really similar to the Commanders last year, where it's like, even if bit of a heartbreaking loss in the playoffs, still pretty insane, rebounding, flipping the record. They went 12-5 compared to 5-12 last year. It was, really good for them. Actually, no, they went 11-6. My bad. I thought they went 12-5, but no, it was 11-6. But still, really good for the Bears, and they have plenty of things to look forward to next season. They also had plenty of guys with individual accolades. They had Kevin Byard make first-team All-Pro. I believe he had 7 interceptions on the season. He was one of many on the team that had multiple interceptions. Joe Thuney also made it to the first-team All-Pro as offensive guard. And then Darnell Wright, their former first-round pick in 2023 at offensive tackle, made second-team All-Pro. And I'm honestly trying to remember, I do not remember the 2023 draft all that much. I forgot that the Bears even picked him. But yeah, so 2 first-team All-Pros, 1 second-team All-Pro, and then Pro Bowlers, even if the Pro Bowl basically means nothing now. Kevin Byard, center Drew Dahlman, who I mentioned earlier on the free agency side, Joe Thuney, and cornerback Nashawn Wright, who was a 2021 third-round pick by the Cowboys. Bears actually signed him in the offseason. Don't remember. Let's see. Where is it? Where was his deal? I actually don't see it. I feel like it was not much for his deal. But yeah, anyway. Let me go, because I'm taking a bit longer than I would like. Let me go just to some stats leaders. So Caleb Williams obviously led the team in passing. He finished just short of 4,000 yards. He had 3,942, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. I feel like I was definitely harder on Caleb Williams this year during my weekly recaps than I probably should have been. But it was like he only had a 58% completion percentage. So he was definitely missing a lot of throws, but he wasn't turning the ball over too much, which was good. There was just it just always felt like there was a little bit more in a lot of games that he could have left on the table. But either way, it's still very, very good season for Caleb Williams and the Bears. In terms of receiving, Colston Loveland led the team with 713 yards and 6 touchdowns. There's actually 3 players, Loveland, Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore, all had 6 touchdowns. DJ Moore had 682 yards. Rome Odunze had 661 yards. And then Luther Burden had 652 yards. And then Kmet had around 350. Olamide Zaccheaus, 313. I should say Cole Kmet. DeAndre Swift had 299 receiving yards, so on and so forth. So, Caleb Williams was certainly spreading the ball around a lot, though I feel like no one on the team really emerged as a true number one. You kind of hope Odunze or Luther Burden could step up into that role, because DJ Moore was kind of fading away from that role. And that's the one worry I have for this offense going forward, is that they might not have a true number one at receiver. But that's pretty nitpicky. On the ground, it was DeAndre Swift leading the way. Where's the rushing? DeAndre Swift eclipsed 1,000 yards by 87. He had 1,087 yards, 9 touchdowns. Kyle Monangai had 783 yards and 5 touchdowns. Then Caleb Williams also had 388 yards on the ground and 3 rushing touchdowns. So Williams actually finished with 30 total touchdowns on his 2025 season. And yeah, it was the ground game for the Bears is like something that really helped them out because it's been something that they've lacked a little bit over the past couple of years. And it's like, or just in the sense of it hasn't quite been as good. But, it's not super surprising that the Bears have two running backs that are splitting, or not necessarily splitting time, but like both succeeding in this kind of system because it's Ben Johnson. And, you look to Detroit and Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, and he's got his new pair here in Swift and Monungai. So there's a lot to like for this Bears offense going into 2026. I also, one more thing about Joe Thuney, he won the inaugural Protector of the Year award for like the league's best offensive lineman. So yeah, just another accolade there for Joe Thuney and the Bears. On the defensive side, let's see, who was the sack leader? Because I actually don't remember off the top of my head. It was Montez Sweat, actually. He had 10 sacks. The next closest was Gervon Dexter at 6 sacks. So definitely looking to try and find someone else to really complement Montez Sweat. Now, you like maybe just hope that Odeyingbo comes back and he like plays healthy and can complement him. But like maybe Bears target edge rusher in the draft. Who knows? Then on interceptions, just going to go with that. Kevin Byard led the team with 7. Nashawn Wright had 5. Tremaine Edmonds had 4. C.J. Gardner-Johnson had 2. Then Jaquan Brisker, DeMarco Jackson, T.J. Edwards, Tyreek Stevenson, and Jalen Johnson all had 1. So 23 interceptions. Where's also the forced fumbles? So Montez Sweat had 3. Nashawn Wright had 2. Tyreek Stevenson had 2. Then C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Austin Booker, Noah Sewell, Jalen Jones, and Nikola Kalinic. I'm going to assume that's how you pronounce his last name. Each had forced fumbles. So they had 23 interceptions, 12 forced fumbles. Absolutely insane turnover potential there for the Chicago Bears defense. They certainly gave up a lot of yards, but they were very good at just finding ways to get the ball back. And while it's certainly good, it's very good, it's definitely not super sustainable. So I wouldn't expect them to put up these same numbers going into 2026. All right. I think that is going to do it for the Chicago Bears. So I'm going to move on to the Detroit Lions next. And let me switch over all my tabs. All 2 of them that I have basically to the Lions. So the Lions were obviously coming off of that heartbreaking loss to the Commanders in the divisional round in 2024. Technically, it's calendar year 2025, but the 2024 season. And they saw the departures of both Ben Johnson to the Bears, who I just covered in depth, and also Aaron Glenn to the Jets as their head coach. They had to replace, a lot of their coaching staff, essentially. And if I can find it, I don't know why this page doesn't have their coaching staff. There we go. There's the coaching staff. So yeah. So to replace Ben Johnson, they brought in John Morton, who was most recently, or who had been before that, the passing game coordinator for the Denver Broncos in 2023 and 2024. He's actually worked in Detroit as a senior offensive assistant in 2022. And so, yeah, he was brought in as their offensive coordinator. Oh, they actually had Mark Brunell as a quarterback's coach. I didn't realize that. That's cool. Mark Brunell, former Washington Redskins quarterback. That's why I recognized him. Wait, Sean Dion Hamilton? So, I'm getting completely sidetracked. So, Sean Dion Hamilton, former Washington Redskins draft pick in 2018. Like, just a random name that I recognize, even if he barely played at all. But I didn't realize he was on the Lions coaching staff as a linebackers coach. But anyway, they brought in Kelvin Shepard as a defensive coordinator. He was actually promoted him, I guess. He was their linebackers coach from 2022 to 2024. So promotion there. And yeah, so that was it. Obviously kept around Dan Campbell on the coaching staff. And there was, good bit to go over in terms of free agency here. I feel like there was a good bit of moves they brought in and lost here and there. Let's see. Where are the numbers? Show me the money. It's like I'm using Wikipedia as like a basic summary. I know I probably shouldn't, but it's like it's color coded well and it's easy to follow. But like I use that and Pro Football Reference. But for some reason, like so it has specific team summaries or like season summaries for each team. But for some reason, they're like always formatted differently, and I don't know why. So it's like the one for the Bears was easy because it had a short blurb on the free agents and it like had their contract details and whatnot. And then the Lions are just it's not as good. I don't know why. Okay, anyway, let me go over to Spot Track because that actually has all the numbers and stuff. So the biggest one they handed out contract-wise was to DJ Reed, former Jets defensive back, I believe cornerback, yeah. Brought in 3 years, $48 million, about 30 of it guaranteed. So big contract there for someone to really beef up the secondary because, I mean, it was the defense that was a problem for the Lions last year, or in 2024, I should say. Partly due to injuries, but also partly due to just not very great play from a lot of guys in their secondary. So, get outside of like Kirby Joseph, essentially, or I believe it's Kirby Joseph, their safety who like intercepts all the passes and stuff. And like everyone hates because he's like makes a lot of hard tackles. But anyway, the DJ Reed signing was, makes sense. Get someone, especially because Teron Armstead, their 2024 cornerback pick, was just really injured a lot. So, you get someone who's a bit more consistent, to say the least. And I feel like that was the one like big one though, because there's a lot of like smaller ones, and I don't remember too many like big signings just in general. So like they had Al-Quadin Muhammad, Avante Maddox, Rock Yassin, like a lot of depth pieces essentially. Because the Lions certainly had a core. Like they have a lot of their good players are homegrown players essentially. They're it's like outside of Jared Goff, who's like the guy they traded for, but like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs. I guess not David Montgomery because I think he was a former Bear, but yeah, like St. Brown, Gibbs, Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson, Jack Campbell, a lot of guys that are pretty, a lot of their high draft picks, they've been the ones that have been the key contributors to this new age Lions team. So anyway, we'll go into the draft. The Lions picked 28th overall, Tyleik Williams, defensive tackle out of Georgia, who I believe suffered or was injured for a decent bit of 2025. I could be wrong. I just don't remember him making too much of an impact in the regular season. They also drafted Tate Ratledge, the guard out of Georgia. I might have said Tyleik Williams out of Georgia. He's from Ohio State, and then Tate Ratledge is from Georgia. In round 2 at pick 57. They also picked Isaac Tesla, wide receiver out of Arkansas, in round 3. And yeah, they're pretty solid set of picks right there, I feel like. I think Tate Ratledge is like slotted in almost immediately as their starting guard. So yeah, there's that. Unfortunately for the Lions, their regular season wasn't super spectacular, but we'll get into that in just a sec. They went 1-3 in the preseason. They actually played in the Hall of Fame game against the Chargers, where they lose. They would win the next week against Atlanta, then lose against Miami and Houston to round of the preseason. But again, preseason is not super interesting or like notable. I just feel like going over it just because. Regular season started out against Green Bay, against the Packers, and their newly traded for Micah Parsons in Lambeau, where they would lose 13-27. And yeah, it's just the Lions just didn't look like the same Lions at this point. They it was their offense that just looked a little sluggish at this point. But they rebounded to form, as I said in my Bears recap earlier. They completely destroyed the Bears, 52-21 in this game. And they followed up with a 38-30 win in Baltimore against the Ravens. And it's like after that initial one, it definitely looked like the Lions were doing okay. It was a little shaky to start, but then they went out on a pretty good streak. Week 4, home against Cleveland, they would win 34-10. Then week 5 against the Bengals, they would win 37-24. So they were actually they got off to a good start. It was like all things considered, they got off to a good start. They would then play at Kansas City in week 6, and it was not as good at all. They would fall 17-30, and I feel like the cracks started to show a little bit around here. It was like, when they weren't beating up against the some pretty bad AFC North teams, it was, things weren't exactly going to plan. This is also the one where in the Kansas City game, Brian Branch got a 1-game suspension because he punched Juju Smith-Schuster right after the game ended. Because I guess he got cheap shotted beforehand. It was a whole thing. Week 7, they would actually rebound to form though. In home against the Buccaneers, though at this point the Buccaneers were kind of in their own free fall. They would win 24-9. So even still, it was going all right. But then they played the Vikings, and they lost to the Vikings at home, 27-24. Not quite sure how this happened, but for some reason the Vikings just kind of had the Lions number this year. It was not great. They would rebound against the Commanders though, so it was a bit of a back and forth here and there. And this was against the Commanders, who I covered at this point last week. They also had a week 8 bye, so we're now in week 10. But the Lions, week 10 against Commanders, they win 44-22, and this was Commanders without Jaden Daniels, and they were dead at this point. Then, however, next week against Philly, they would lose 16-9 in a game where their offense it was really, really bad. Not quite sure what was going on here, but yeah, it was not good. Then week 12, they would rebound, however, going up against the Giants. So it was, win, loss here and there. They would win 34-27, and the game probably shouldn't have been as close as it was, especially against Jameis Winston. This is also the one where Jameis Winston had his insane mossing a linebacker play when he caught a ball from Gonoshevsky. It was fun. It was hilarious. But the Lions wound up winning this game in overtime, and it was. Yeah, they were still at this point? They were still 7-4, so they still certainly had playoffs in their sights, but it wasn't quite the same Lions, I felt like, at this point. They would then host the Packers next week, and they would lose 31-24. It was just kind of, hard-fought game, but in the end, Packers would win. And a lot of these games, my memory is not, spectacular on this because it's been a couple months at this point, and I've had to think about various other things. So I'm doing my best to just kind of give you the very brief highlights. Week after, they would play the Cowboys in Detroit. They would win 44-30. No surprise that their offense had a good game this game. Then it was against the Rams in week 15 in Los Angeles, and they would lose 41-34. And you kind of see the defense, after an initial stretch of good games, was starting to have some problems here and there. And it was it didn't feel like one side really let down the other as a whole compared to last season. But overall, it was one where it was just I don't know. Some things were off here and there. Week 16 against the Steelers, they would lose 29-24. And home also, this was in Detroit. This is also the game where DK Metcalf punched a fan on the sidelines who was calling him by his full government name. It was a whole very weird thing. But yeah, this is losing to Aaron Rodgers is always never fun. Then in week 17, it was kind of the coup de grace of not good. They would play in Minnesota, not against JJ McCarthy at this point, but this was against Max Brosmer, I believe. This was on Netflix, I want to say. And yeah, they lost 23-10. I still don't know how this happened because it was Max Brosmer and he is terrible. God, it was really bad. And yeah, I think at this point they were knocked out of playoff contention because they were, I think, 8-7 or something like that. Or no, they fell to 8-8. So it was like, they just went on a losing streak, fell to 8-8, and in a really tightly contested NFC conference and NFC North, losing those games really just killed their season. And then week 18, like the Lions were done at this point. They beat the Bears though, as I said earlier, 19-16. But in the end, the Lions missed the playoffs. It was just kind of just a disappointing end of the season for them overall. They wound up parting ways with their offensive coordinator, whose name I've already forgotten, if I'm being honest. It was, who was it? John Morton. Yeah, they parted ways with him, which I think is probably a good idea because it just didn't feel great. And like Dan Campbell also took over play calling duties by like week 10. So it wasn't great overall. It was just a very mediocre season for them. Like they did have some good here and there. Jack Campbell made first team All-Pro, so did Penei Sewell. Then Amon-Ra St. Brown and Aiden Hutchinson had made second team All-Pros. And then Pro Bowlers were Jack Campbell, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jared Goff, Aiden Hutchinson, Penei Sewell, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So, there's still stuff there. It's just, you don't want to go 8-8, essentially. So to go over stat leaders, Jared Goff finished the season 4,500 passing yards, 34 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Rushing was Jahmyr Gibbs with 1,200 yards, just over, and 13 touchdowns. Dave Montgomery had 17, or not 17, yeah, he had a whole 17 rushing yards total in the season. No, he had 716 yards and 8 touchdowns, and basically no one else had anything. It was literally just Jahmyr Gibbs and Dave Montgomery. That was it. The next closest was Jared Goff with 45 on the season. He did have 5 rushing touchdowns. Or no, that's first downs. Never mind. He had 0. I was off by 1 on the categories. Receiving yards, Amon-Ra St. Brown led the team with 1,401. Next was Jameson Williams with 1,117. Then it was Jahmyr Gibbs with 616. Sam Laporta, 489. Khalif Raymond, 289. Isaac Tesla, 239. Dave Montgomery, 192. Brock Wright, 108. And a couple guys here and there with some extras. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 11 touchdowns. J-Mo had 7. Jahmyr Gibbs had 5. Laporta had 3. Khalif Raymond had 1. And Isaac Tesla actually had 6. He was making some insane catches. Brock Wright also had 2 touchdowns. David Montgomery did not have a single touchdown catch. Then on the defensive side, it was Aiden Hutchinson leading the team with 14.5 sacks. Al-Quadin Muhammad actually had 11 sacks, so pretty good right there. Jack Campbell had 5 sacks, but he's a middle linebacker, so you're not exactly expecting him to, rack up a ton of sacks. He actually had 176 combined tackles, which is kind of crazy. Like, not super surprising that he makes All-Pro. But yeah, it was really after Hutchinson and Al-Quadin Muhammad. It wasn't super spectacular pass rushing wise in terms of sack numbers. I know that's not the only, sack, or that's not the only grade for a pass rusher, but it's the easy one to go off of. Interceptions, Kirby Joseph had 3, DJ Reed had 2, Aiden Hutchinson actually had 1. There's actually a lot of players who had 1. So Aiden Hutchinson, Derek Barnes, Alex Anzalone, Amik Robertson, Thomas Harper, Avonte Maddox, Terrion Arnold, and Arthur Millette all had an interception. Also on the Alex Anzalone front, I think there's a chance the Lions might cut him because there's been some contract negotiation stuff going on, but I could be thinking of someone else, but I feel like it's him. Also on the forced fumble front, Aiden Hutchinson had 4, Jack Campbell 3, Amik Robinson 2, and then DJ Reed, Thomas Harper, Avonte Maddox, Brian Branch, Tyrus Wheat, and Ali McNeil all had 1. So the Lions finished with 13 interceptions, 15 forced fumbles. But I feel like the defense wasn't, the worst thing in the world for the Lions, but it could have been a bit better. I think they're definitely going to invest in it a little bit more in the offseason. It was really the offense, especially on the offensive line. Their offensive line majorly regressed, and it cost them a lot, especially down the stretch. So after that, we will go to the Green Bay Packers, and let me shift around my tabs again. Packers made the playoffs. I've already said how it ends with them, as they would lose to the Bears in the wild card round. But how we get there is a different thing. this was one where the Packers, had made a couple of moves in the offseason, but not like compared to the Lions, who made a lot of like bulk moves of like lower end players. The Packers made a couple higher end moves, I should say. I think that's the best way to describe it. So according to Spot Track, at least, they handed out 2 big contracts. First one was to guard Aaron Banks over from the 49ers on a 4-year, $77 million deal with $27 million guaranteed. The other one was Nate Hobbs, cornerback from the Oakland Raiders, or not Oakland, Las Vegas Raiders, transported back to the 2010s. So the over from the Raiders, 4 years, $48 million, 16 guaranteed. Other than that, it was really not much. They brought over Mecole Hardman and Isaiah Simmons on 1-year deals. They also signed Trayvon Diggs late in the season after the Cowboys cut him, but it wasn't, like anything I feel like super spectacular. It was a lot of outside of that, I feel like smaller moves here and there. On the coaching front, I don't really think there was too much either, because I don't think there was anyone from the Packers on their staff that like left for big roles. But yeah, actually, the big news though, I guess that actually happened after the draft. But let's see, do they have a trade section here? Because of course, the Bears section had a trade. But the Packers section does not for some reason, despite... no, never mind. It's literally at the top. It's literally at the top. How did I miss that? Anyway. Yeah, the trades. Well, they trade one. They traded for Darian Kinnard, former Eagles, actually drafted by the Chiefs in 2022, but was most recently on the Eagles, offensive tackle, for a 2027 6th-round pick. But the big one, though, was obviously the Micah Parsons trade. So the Cowboys traded away Micah Parsons to the Packers. Packers traded away a 2026 and 2027 first-round pick, as well as Kenny Clark, their former first-round pick from 2017, I believe. 2016, actually. I was off by 1 year. They had also cut Jair Alexander, who I believe he was their 2017. No, he was 20. Who did the Packers draft in 2017 then? And now hang on. I got to sidetrack here. Who did the Packers draft in the first round in 2017? I don't remember. Green Bay Packers. Did they draft anyone No, they didn't. It was David Njoku. That's who the pick would have been, according to this. Yeah, so they traded around with Cleveland, and Cleveland used that pick to select David Njoku. Bet Aaron Rodgers probably would have liked to have him back when he was playing. But yeah, so Jair Alexander was the 2018 first-round pick. So their 2018 and 2016 first-round picks that the Packers had, Kenny Clark and Jair Alexander, were gone. Kenny Clark to the Cowboys. Jair was cut. He wound up signing with the Baltimore Ravens and did not play very well at all because he's kind of washed at that point. And yeah, so they got back Micah Parsons, signed him to a massive, massive deal. It was like 41 per year, like $41 million per year or something like that. It was ridiculous. But yeah, the draft came, and it was actually in Green Bay, which was pretty cool. The Packers selected wide receiver Matthew Golden, wide receiver out of Texas, in the first round. First time they drafted a wide receiver in the first round since 2002. They also drafted another wide receiver, Savion Williams, out of TCU in the third round. And why do I have Baron Sorrell clicked on? Why is he purple on Wikipedia? I don't remember ever clicking on him before. Anyway, the very random 4th-round pick, defensive end out of Texas. They also had Tom Grassi, Packers YouTuber, announced a pick in the 7th round for Michael Robinson, who has already been traded away. I didn't realize he got traded away. He just got released. He didn't even. That sucks. He didn't even make it to the Packers roster. He re-signed the practice squad and was basically on the practice squad up until the Titans claimed him off the Packers practice squad. So he's on the Titans right now. But yeah, he's a 7th round pick. So it's not like a super spectacular. You're not expecting much of that, but still, it's like I just always remember that pick because it was a Tom Grossi call. But still, anyways, I think that was it for big moves. So I'll try and speed through this here a little bit. Preseason Packers went 2-1, lost to the Jets, won against Colts and Seahawks in that order. Then in week 1 against the Lions, I already covered that. They would win 27-13. Then week 2 on Thursday night against Commanders, as I covered last week, they would win 27-18. Their defense especially was looking incredible. Micah Parsons was looking to be everything that he was expected to be. And then they lost to the Browns in week 3, 13-10. Still not sure how this happened, but yeah. It's always one of the ones where it's like you got to pump some brakes on some teams in the early time because like how the heck did they lose to the Browns? I still don't get that. Then week 4 against the Cowboys on Sunday night, I think is what it was. Sunday night they would actually tie the Cowboys 40-40 going into overtime as well. It was a game. Then they would have a bye week 5. Then they would go up against the Bengals and they would win 27-18. Then in week 7 in Arizona, they would win 27-23. And it was like for the Packers, it was interesting, coming like first 2 games really good, then floundered a little bit here and there. But overall it was they're looking pretty solid. Week 8 was against Steelers in Pittsburgh. They would win 35-25. This is the game against Aaron Rodgers. So I think it's actually the first time Rodgers played against the Packers since his departure in 2023. And in the end, the new age of LaFleur and Jordan Love got the best of their former longtime quarterback. Then in week 9, home against Carolina, they would actually lose this game 16-13. And it was another one of the ones where the Green Bay offense just kind of shut down and couldn't really do much. This also was unfortunately the game where Tucker Kraft would tear his ACL. So, it's certainly part of it. Losing the guy who's probably the best receiving target on the team really sucked. Unfortunately, I think I'd said going into the season and like multiple times this season, like Packers have an army of wide receiver 2s, like your Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, even throwing Savion Williams as well now. Matthew Golden was kind of like supposed to be the savior from that. He was supposed to be the wide receiver 1. He is not even a wide receiver 2 at this point. He did not do much this season. Next week was against the Eagles, and once again, their offense just, was not having it. They would lose 10-7. Brandon McManus was also shown to have a pretty rough go of things this season. So the Packers actually fall to 5-3-1 at this point. Then they would go into New York and face the Giants, and they would rebound, winning 27-20. Then the week after, they would play host to the Minnesota Vikings and destroy the Vikings 23-6. And after that, this is also the one where I think I want to say Josh Jacobs was down with an injury at this point, and Emmanuel Wilson filled in because he had like a really nice game this game, but I might be thinking of one later. There was like one game this season where Emmanuel Wilson was filling in for Josh Jacobs after Josh Jacobs went down, and he was dealing with an injury, like injuries a lot this season. And I just remember picking up Emmanuel Wilson in fantasy that week, and he had like 25 points. It was great. But Thanksgiving was that Vikings-Packers game. I actually forgot that was the Vikings. Was that? No, that was the week after. I read Thanksgiving, then looked up, but I realized I was wrong. Yeah, week 13 was the Lions game, which is Thanksgiving game. This is the one Packers won 31-24. Already covered that one a little bit. Then the week after, another one I already covered. This was Bears at Packers. This is the first. This is the one when Packers won with the interception by Keyshawn Nixon. Then the week after, the Packers would travel to Denver to take on the Broncos, and they would fall to the Broncos 34-26. Still there at 9-4-1. But unfortunately, this game was more remembered for the fact that Micah Parsons tore his ACL this game. And yeah, that really took the wind out of the Packers' sails at this point. They would then fall to the Bears next week, in that overtime heartbreaking loss for them. Then, at this point, they're starting to go into free fall mode. They would get demolished by the Ravens 41-24 at home in week 17. And it just felt like at this point, like everyone was getting injured. Like Jordan Love went down. Some like Willis started playing. And like a lot of guys on the defense were getting injured. It was bad all around. Then they lose 16-3 in the season finale against Minnesota in Minnesota. But at this point, they were starting Clayton Tune. So it was like, it just didn't matter. But yeah, they just complete free fall. They were, 9-7-1 after being 9-3-1. It was not great. And then obviously the wild card round happened. And I think Packers fans would like to forget that happened. So yeah, it was a season that started out really well for them, but injuries, unfortunately, were probably the biggest factor here. I think, like, you can certainly, talk about the inconsistent offense, but, losing honestly your best offensive weapon in Tucker Kraft and your best defender in Micah Parsons, it's not good. It's not gonna, it's bad. So I don't fault the Packers there too much. I don't think there's been too much in terms of... Actually, that actually has been a good bit. I'm forgetting. So yeah, Sean Mannion, their quarterbacks coach, has left to Philly to be their offensive coordinator. Then their defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley, has gone to Miami to be their head coach. They've actually replaced Jeff Hafley with Jonathan Gannon. And then there's been some other assistant coach roles here and there, but outside of that, like Matt LaFleur is still around, Brian Gutekunst is still around. I believe they both got extended. The Packers do, however, they don't, however, have the first round pick as they've traded to the Cowboys. So we'll see how the Packers go into 2026 with, not exactly the most resources to them available at this point. And I think they're pretty strapped against the cap for them as well. Let me actually see if I can find team cap. If I go to here, how much cap space do the Packers have? They're 22nd at the moment right now. They're at just under the cap by about $4 million, but obviously cap space can be restructured at plenty. So expect that number to go up real soon. So actually, I can actually cover both the Lions and the Bears since I didn't. So Lions and Bears are actually both very similar, 27th, 28th, respectively. The Lions and Bears both are a little under $9 million under the cap, or a little, basically around negative $9 million for cap space. Lions at 9.1, Bears 9.5. Vikings, however, we'll get to them. They're not in a good spot at all. But yeah, so the Vikings are up next, and let me switch around all my things one last time, since I like going at this pace, actually. Definitely spent a bit too long on the Bears earlier. But to be fair, the Bears actually made it the farthest out of anyone. But so the Vikings are up last, and rough season for them. I'm sorry, Vikings fans. It was not good. So the Vikings, bid farewell to Sam Darnold as they let him walk in free agency to Seattle, where he proceeded to go and win a Super Bowl. So not good there. Since the Vikings wanted to roll with J.J. McCarthy, their first-round pick from 2024, at I think 9th overall, maybe 11th. He was the 5th of 6 quarterbacks selected in the first round of 2024, after Michael Penix and before Bo Nix. And he had, I think it was a broken collarbone. He's suffered a season-ending injury in the preseason in 2024, so it was that we hadn't seen him yet, how he performed. I also don't think I ever mentioned who Pro Bowlers and All-Pros for the Packers. Let me actually do that right now before I forget. All-Pros, Xavier McKinney, safety, made second-team All-Pro, and then Micah Parsons made first-team All-Pro as defensive end. And then Keyshawn Nixon and Micah Parsons made the Pro Bowl. All right. Now I can go back to the Vikings. Why is this? Okay. So yeah, the Minnesota Vikings were coming off of a really nice season, 14-3, though they lost to the Rams in the wild card. Actually, I think it's the division round, right? Was it division or wild card? I have to imagine it's division, right? No, it was wild card. Who was the division then? I don't know. It doesn't matter because that was 2024. Anyways, back to 2025 and the Vikings. The Vikings were, rolling with the young guy, which was to be expected, I think. They spent a lot in free agency. They had a lot of money to spend, and spend it they did. The biggest contract they handed out was to Will Fries, guard from the Colts. Gave him a 5-year contract worth $87 million with $44 guaranteed. They also re-signed Byron Murphy, their cornerback, to a 3-year deal, $54 million, $34 guaranteed. They handed out a big deal to former Commanders defensive lineman Jonathan Allen, who the Commanders had released, $51 million over 3 years, $31 guaranteed, which turned out to be a pretty bad contract because, unfortunately, John Allen is washed, which I hate to say because he's I like him a lot. It was just I think they're planning on releasing him, or I don't know if I can just because of the amount of dead money, but he didn't have a great season from what I remember. I could be completely wrong on that, but I just don't remember him having a good season at all. They also brought in on the defensive line Javon Hargrave, former 49ers, I think first-round pick, actually. John Allen was also a first-round pick in 2017. Hargrave was... When was he picked, actually? He was a round 3 pick in 2016. I guess I was thinking of someone else. I just feel like, it's 49ers defensive linemen. They usually pick them in the first round. There's a lot. But he had a 2-year deal, $30 million, $19 guaranteed. They also brought in center Ryan Kelly over from the Colts. So 2 Colts offensive linemen on a 2-year, $18 million deal. Then they also brought in cornerback Isaiah Rodgers over from the Eagles on a 2-year, $11 million deal. Then various other 1-year deals included Jeff Okudah, former Lions 3rd overall pick in 2020. Rondale Moore, who again, rest in peace. And then also Carson Wentz on a 1-year deal as a backup, who would wind up actually playing a few games and probably play out the last of his career here after he went down with an injury. But yeah, I think that does it. Were there any big trades? I don't remember them trading too many. Actually, they did trade a good bit. Never mind. So they traded away Ed Ingram for a 6th-round pick, guard. They traded for Jordan Mason from the 49ers and a 6th-round pick for a 5th-round pick in 2025 and a 6th-round pick in 2026. They traded for quarterback Sam Howell from the Seattle Seahawks and a 2025 6th-round pick for a 2025 5th-round pick, though I think they almost immediately either cut him or traded him again over to the Eagles. So he just came in, came out. Yeah. So there's 2 things down. They traded away Harrison Phillips, defensive lineman, to the Jets for a bunch of late round picks. They traded away Sam Howell to the Eagles for some late round picks. They traded away Mekhi Blackman, cornerback, to the Colts for a late round pick. And then they also traded away Adam Thielen to the Panthers for a 2026 7th round pick and a 2027 5th round pick. Was that the... No, that was actually, they traded for him. Never mind. That's what it was. And they gave up a 2026 5th round pick and 2027 4th round pick. So they actually traded away a 4th round pick. I knew there was a 4th round pick involved for Thielen. And unfortunately, Thielen basically did nothing for the Vikings in 2025. It was rough, essentially. Vikings also, because of a lot of the trades they had going on over the past couple of years, they only had 5 picks in the 2025 draft. They picked guard Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State, 24th overall. And then didn't have any in round 2. They traded, they picked Ty Felton, wide receiver out of Maryland, in round 3, who I legitimately don't remember. He had 3 catches in 2025, which was rough. They selected Georgia defensive tackle Tyrion Ingham-Dawkins in round 5. And then 2 round 6 picks were Kobe King, linebacker out of Penn State, and Gavin Bartholomew, tight end from Pittsburgh. And yeah, it's from what I've seen, from what I can tell, not a super great draft. Oh, I think Donovan Jackson actually had a pretty solid season, but overall, not great. Coaching wise, wasn't too much going on there. And then we'll get right into the season for the Vikings. So preseason, they went 1-2, won their first game against the Texans, then lost against the Patriots and Titans. Then week 1, as we covered before, was the Bears comeback, where they were down in the fourth quarter, then scored 21 points, and JJ McCarthy had one really good quarter. Then the next week they played the Falcons and lost 22-6. That was at home. And I believe I think McCarthy got injured at the end, like either at the end of the week 1 game or, no, he got injured in the Falcons game. Never mind. Carson Wentz came in week 3 against the Bengals. And this is one where Isaiah Rodgers, I think, had 2 pick sixes in this game. He had a pick 6 and a fumble return for a touchdown in the same game. And it was like in the same half as well. It was against Jake Browning because Joe Burrow had gone down with an injury at this point. It was really bad for the Bengals, I should specify. The Vikings had a great game this game. They won 48-10. And they're riding a bit of a high at this point. They then kind of lost that high next week in Pittsburgh, where they lost 21-24. Then they would actually bounce back against the Browns. They would win 21-17 in week 5. They would have a week 6 bye. And then week 7 against the Eagles was a 28-22 loss. Let me make sure. When did McCarthy come back? Because I don't remember off the top of my head when, because he was out for a good bit in the early season. He was, let's see. Yeah, he didn't come back until week 9. That's what it was. And then he was there week 9. Yeah, okay, he missed one of the game. That's what it was. But yeah, so McCarthy was unfortunately out for a good chunk of the early season, including the week 8 game against the Chargers. And this is also one where the Vikings will lose. They will lose 37-10. And yeah, things were, the wheels were starting to come off here a little bit. McCarthy would come back in week 9 against the Lions. They would actually win 27-24, as I covered earlier. And unfortunately for the Vikings, though, McCarthy was not having a good time. Just not a good season for him as a whole. They would fall to the Ravens in week 10, 27-19. Then they would fall to the Bears next week, 19-17. Week 12 against the Packers, more of the same, 23-6 loss. Then in Seattle, they would get shut out 26-0. This is also Max Brosmer's first appearance. I think it's actually a start because McCarthy was out with a concussion. Carson Wentz had also gone down with an injury by week. I think it was in the Chargers game, if I remember correctly, where he was basically throwing all of the ligaments out of his shoulder. It was really sad to watch. It was not good. It was the Vikings were kind of in free fall at this point. They would actually rebound though against the Commanders, who were in even more of a free fall, and their defense finally showed up again. So they would go from being shut out against Seattle to shutting out the Commanders 31-0. McCarthy was back for this game. Then in week 15 against the Cowboys, they would win 34-26. So they go 4-8 and then rattle off 2 consecutive wins. Then they would continue that winning streak, winning against the Giants 16-13, and then they would continue it again against the Lions with Max Brosmer 23-10. So they were basically out of playoff contention at this point, and then they rattled off 4 straight to go 8-8 at this point. It was something, to say the least. And then it was the season finale, which I already talked about with the Packers. They would win 16-3. So, So, like, for everything that happened, they somehow went 9-8. They missed the playoffs, obviously, but they cap off the season with a 5-game winning streak. It's just that McCarthy, he missed a lot of the early season when they kind of needed him, and even when he came back, he didn't play great. And that was the big thing, was that the quarterback situation was the biggest thing for them. The quarterback they let walk in free agency just won a Super Bowl with the Seahawks. I started to say he's Seahawks and then went to Seattle. And I was like, wait a minute, they started the same exact way. I'm a little tired. But so I still feel like the Vikings had like a 5-12 season, but they actually had a 9-8 season. It's just that like the most underwhelming 9-8 season ever, it feels like. They did not have anyone make the Pro Bowl. Will Reichert actually made first team All-Pro as a kicker. And then their long snapper, Andrew DePola, was a second team All-Pro. So there's that at least. But overall, it was it's just not one to remember season-wise for the Vikings. Statistics-wise, McCarthy, he played in 10 games, had 1,632 yards, 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Carson Wentz played in 5 games, had 1,200 yards, 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Max Brosmer played in 7 games, only started 2, had 328 yards, 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. It was like just a lot of turmoil at the quarterback position. In terms of receiving, Justin Jefferson, I think, led the team. I clicked the wrong thing. Justin Jefferson led the team with 1,048 yards. Only had 2 touchdowns, though. Big down year for him because, again, he didn't have good quarterback play at all. Jordan Addison was second on the team with 610 yards, 3 touchdowns. Jalen Naylor had 444 yards and 4 touchdowns, so, 4s all around. TJ Hawkinson had 438 yards, 3 touchdowns. Then various other things there. Rushing wise, Jordan Mason led the team with 758, 6 touchdowns as well. Aaron Jones, who only played in 12 games, had 548 yards and 2 touchdowns. McCarthy had 181 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns. There's a good chance the Vikings look elsewhere at running back to get a running back 1, because Aaron Jones my guess is they're probably gonna release him if he's not a free agent already. Just not like the offense was very underwhelming this season for the Vikings. Don't think it's very controversial to take. Very underwhelming showcase from the Vikings offense compared to what it was the year prior. The defense wasn't too bad, all things considered. Dallas Turner led the team with 8 sacks. Andrew Van Ginkel had 7. Eric Wilson 6. Jalen Redmond had 6. Eric Wilson had 6.5. Sorry. Dallas Turner, former first-round pick by the Vikings, I believe, in 2024. I think. 17th overall in 2024. So I think it was actually he had a pretty good end of season stretch for his time in 2025. In terms of interceptions, Harrison Smith led the team with 2. Actually tied with 2 others. Josh Metellus and Byron Murphy also had 2. Andrew Van Ginkel had 1. It was that Jaden Daniels interception, pick 6 actually, and then Isaiah Rodgers also had the pick 6. Why is it? Okay, I guess Van Ginkel didn't have a pick 6. I could have sworn he had a pick 6. I guess he must have gotten tackled, maybe by Terry or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, it was. I feel like I'm surprised there weren't more interceptions, but they did have a lot of forced fumbles. Dallas Turner had 4 forced fumbles. Good tongue twister right there. Eric Wilson also had 4. Isaiah Rodgers with 2. That was in the same game. Then Harrison Smith, Jalen Redmond, Javon Hargrave, Jonathan Grenard, Blake Cashman, Theo Jackson, Jalen Naylor actually, and Tavir Thomas all are credited with a 4th fumble as well. The defense for the Vikings, I don't think was the problem this year. It was the offense. So it'll be interesting to see how they approach 2026. They have fired their general manager, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensa. Not super surprising because he was not good at drafting, all things considered. So we'll see how it goes there. They've also lost their passing game coordinator, Durante Jones, to the Commanders because he's their defensive coordinator. though they have retained Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator, and Brian Flores is very, very good. And otherwise, the coaching staff is largely the same. Vikings are picking 18th overall. However, they are currently sitting, if I remember correctly, and if I go back to the team cap page, they are sitting last in the NFL at the moment in cap space at negative 42 million, which is not good. Obviously, there's a lot they can get around. But just to go over some contracts. So Justin Jefferson is their biggest cap hit at $38 million. My guess is they try and restructure him in some way to free him up. Jonathan Allen is second with a $23 million hit. Not sure if they're going to keep him around, restructure, release or something. He does carry a $17 million cap hit at the moment, dead cap hit. Brian O'Neill, their right tackle, is also at $23 million. Christian Darrisaw, their left tackle, $22 million. And then Jonathan Grenard, edge rusher, also $22 million. And then Javon Hargrave, $21 million. TJ Hawkinson, $21 million. My guess is they get rid of Hawkinson, or at least like try and restructure his deal, because he also carries a $12 million dead cap hit. There's a lot of there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys at basically $20 million cap hit or more. And it's Van Ginkel, Byron Murphy, TJ Hawkinson, Hargrave, Grenard, Darrisaw, O'Neill, Allen, Jefferson. There's a lot of money tied up there, essentially. Like Aaron Jones has a $14 million dead cap hit, $6 million dead cap. That's probably a release. And yeah, it's like the benefits of a rookie quarterback deal is that you can give out a lot of these contracts, but there's going to be a lot. Whoever is taking over the Vikings general manager post, they're going to have a lot of work to do, essentially. I think that is the conclusion you should take from that. With that, however, I think that is it for this episode. I think I got everything big for these 4 teams. Very, very competitive division this year in the NFC North. I'm very interested to see how this division evolves going into 2026. The Packers coming off of a lot of injuries. Vikings have a lot of work to do. Lions looking to kind of retool and re-identify themselves, and then the Bears looking to just build on what they have in 2025 and really just get more consistent and solidify themselves. So I think it's going to be a very fun division to watch in 2026. But that will do it for this one. Next episode period will be this Saturday on the finale of my StarCraft 2 recap. It will be on Legacy of the Void, and I might throw in a little bit on Nova Covert Ops just to go over it. But yeah, basically a month-long recap of StarCraft will be ending here on, I believe, the last day of February. So yeah, it was pretty fun. And after that will be next Tuesday, and I will be going to the NFC South to go over those teams down there. So that will do it. I think that's everything I have to cover. Thank you very much for listening.